Joining me now are Brett McGurk, the former presidential envoy in the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, Jeremy Bash, the former chief of staff at CIA and the Pentagon, and Peter Baker, New York Times chief White House correspondent. Jeremy, first to you. It seems to me that Bolton is kind of confirming while not confirming, but the fact that the Democrats didn't get the same briefing the Republicans got, and they weren't briefed together, and it wasn't the Big Eight or the Gang of Eight or any of the top leaders, this is not the way it has ever been done under Bush, Clinton, Bush, and Obama.
That's right, Andrea. Intelligence briefings to Congress, which, by the way, is required by the law, have always been bipartisan. So obviously the White House is playing politics. And I think the question is why. And I've looked at more than 1,000 PDBs during my tenure at CIA and DOD. And I'll tell you, there's a lot in there that's, about the election scandal in Mali or the economy in Argentina or what China's doing in space. Something about Russians putting a bounty on the head of the United States would absolutely jump off the page if the president ignored it, didn't ask any follow-up questions, or his own staff didn't want to tell him about it because they were scared that he's so pro-Putin he wouldn't react kindly to such information. It shows you just how distorted, just how warped our national security decision-making process is. And we've warned for a long time, Andrea, okay, the president doesn't take intel briefings. It's not just that he doesn't hear them, he doesn't listen. Are there consequences? Now we know there are consequences. There are 3 dead Americans from an IED roadside blast that the Taliban carried out in April 2019 that may have been linked to this bounty program. We need to get to the bottom of this to give answers to the families of those 3 fallen heroes.
And when this may get down to what is the meaning of the word briefing, because they seem to be very lawyerly in talking about, well, he wasn't briefed, but does that mean he got the presidential's daily brief, he just didn't read it? Or they did verbally brief him to it, as Bolton reportedly did, according to the Associated Press, and he doesn't remember it? Brett McGurk, I was just looking down at some of the dates that you've been citing of how many times the president talked to Vladimir Putin after this first briefing that he got in February. 6 times. How is that possible without him ever mentioning this?
Well, Andrea, that's why the explanation coming from the White House here, and I just heard what Congressman Schiff said, that it sounds like they were briefed by the National Security Advisor and the Chief of Staff. That's a problem because there's a conflict of interest here because the president, there's a total breakdown in the West Wing in the very best case. But to have this information in the PDB, it's the president's daily brief. He was briefed. It is his briefing. He has to read it. The fact that he didn't, if that's true, is just a total dereliction of duty. Our troops take an oath, and I spent a lot of time in these war zones with our men and women out there. They take an oath, and they're sent where their country needs them. And there's kind of an assumption that the commander-in-chief, they're there under his command, that he will care for them, that he's paying attention to what's going on. For this information to come to him in the presidential daily brief, that means at least one agency in the intelligence community said this is extremely serious, Mr. President. And then to have half a dozen phone calls with President Putin and to not have this in his head or to give a brushback pitch, hey, President Putin, I'm seeing some things here and you better watch it, is a total dereliction of duty in the first role of the president to keep Americans safe. And another corollary to this story, it's a broader mosaic. The Washington Post has reported that in the PDB, in the president's daily brief, the threat of the pandemic from China in January and February, there was 12 warnings to him at the same time that he was totally dismissing this and saying, I just spoke with President Xi, who said everything's under control. The president takes the words of foreign adversaries over the intelligence community. This is a common story. And it just goes to the heart of the fundamental duty of the president to keep the country and Americans safe. This is an extremely serious story. I think we're going to learn more about it, and it's just sickening. And I'm thinking about our people out there who have to believe that the president has their best interests in mind. And something here totally broke down.
And I wanted to share with you something that Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who is the number 3rd ranking House Republican, just said on the Hill, and this is in regard to the briefings that the Republicans got last night. They did get the intel briefings. And take a listen to how strongly she is warning Russia, something the president has yet to do.
I want to be absolutely clear that America's adversaries should know, and they should have no doubt, that any targeting of U.S. forces by Russians, by anyone else, will face a very swift and deadly response.
Peter Baker, you've been around a long time, a number of White Houses, and you know Russia well, having been a Moscow bureau chief there. This is so clear. The White House, to my hearing, to my listening, is playing all sorts of games with, well, it was not finished intelligence, and Gina Haspel has put out a statement from CIA that actually indicates they were taking it seriously. They did warn the allies, and they did do force protection. So they did take it seriously enough. No intelligence is ever absolutely finished.
Well, of course, that's exactly right. And Jeremy, I think, will remember this. And so will Brett. When the President Obama was presented intelligence about where Osama bin Laden was, he was told it was a 50-50 chance that it really was bin Laden. And he took action based on, obviously, incomplete intelligence. You can't have, very rarely can you have completely definitive intelligence. You have to make judgments. You have to make decisions based on threads of information and take action or not take action accordingly, depending on your judgment on that. I thought what Liz Cheney just said there in that clip was something, as you say, we haven't heard from the president. She's not saying that the Russians did or didn't do this. She's not saying the intelligence is definitive or not definitive. She's simply saying if anybody thinks they could do this, they ought to think again. She's laying down sort of a warning that you would expect to hear from a president, even if he wasn't 100% sure that the intelligence was right. Just sort of a generic, do not try this, do not come after us because you will pay a price. Remember, this is a president who faulted President Obama and faulted President Bush for not taking more action against Iran, for targeting American troops through proxies in Iraq. And he, in fact, then authorized the assassination of Soleimani at the beginning of this year. As a result of that, he said this is something that should have been done a long time ago. Yet in this instance, clearly, he has not taken action, and he's not even spoken out about it. That's the thing that's most interesting.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.